the Chargers invited me up to get an inside look at their voluntary workouts, including getting to see Ben Herbert in action for the first time.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together for 8 years now, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we get to talk about your special trip up to the Chargers facility for voluntary workouts, and you had some really cool stories in there, especially one of them talking about being able to take in the solar eclipse next to a very important figure in the Chargers organization. So we're going to talk about that trip and all the little things we got to get from that. And then we hear from passing game coordinator Marcus Brady and run game coordinator / tight ends coach Andy Bischoff. And honestly, Andy Bischoff had a ton of great things to say, and we're going to talk about all of that, especially the tight end room. It's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, he had high praise for the tight end room and also had a really unique kind of perspective on how this team is going to try to maximize Justin Herbert, him and Marcus Brady both. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So, David, I got to go up to Chargers voluntary workouts, and I can't say everything I saw, but I do want to talk about some of the cool things I did get to see, including Ben Herbert in action for the first time, which was basically just some stretching, some workouts and things like that. But it's funny how much you can take away even from something as simple as that. I'm sure some of you saw the picture on X of me being out there at the practice for a little bit. It was really, really cool. And thank you to everyone that helped make it happen, because, it was a really awesome experience, including Jamal LaFrance, who obviously made this all work. So thank you to him. Thank you to the Chargers for letting us go up there. But Ben Herbert, I watched him, and it was interesting because he wasn't just in guys' faces screaming at them and stuff like that, but everything he was saying was very intentional. And a couple of the takeaways I had from it was, first of all, just letting guys know exactly why they're doing what they're doing, why they're doing the stretches they're doing, why they're doing the workouts they're doing, and exactly what they're hoping to prevent or hoping to strengthen by doing it. He was in front of the class, the small group he was in front of, being able to kind of go through the workouts and show people how to do it properly. And also, they really had things broken up into small groups, which I appreciated, and something that's afforded to them because of the larger staff that they have there now, right? But the main thing I had just from him was just not a big rah-rah guy at that moment, but the way the players kind of watched him and listened and kind of just hung on everything he said, I thought was really impressive, especially since he hasn't been around that long. But I could absolutely see kind of why he carries the gravitas that he has. It was really cool getting to see a little bit of that in person.
Yeah, I think having a guy like Ben Herbert to be able to come in and be able to show these guys what they're doing, be able to explain why they're doing it, and being able to get that buy-in, I think is really going to be helpful for him to make that connection with the players, because once he's able to explain these things and explain how it's going to benefit them, I think then they're going to be able to say, okay, I understand why I'm doing this. It's going to make me a better football player. And then that's going to earn that trust that he talked about. That's going to be so important on trying to maximize and get the most out of these players.
Yeah, and I think as far as the sizes of the group goes, I was talking to you before the show. It's like, hey, if you're in a public school, right, and you have 38 kids in your class, you're probably not getting the one-on-one from the teacher that you need, right? But by having this staff and having things broken up a little bit smaller, you can make sure not only that guys are doing the right thing, but making sure they're doing the right thing the right way and making sure the technique is nice. And even from, 30 yards away that I was, still a little bit afraid of Ben Herbert. That's just kind of the way, he carries himself. He doesn't even have to be saying anything crazy. You just kind of feel that vibe of, okay,
it's because he doesn't look at you. He stares through your soul.
Totally. And it was really cool to see that even from a distance kind of feel what the Ben Herbert experience is. But the other thing that was really cool was getting to take an inside look at the Costa Mesa facilities, right? The ones that are going to be working in now until training camp, especially because of the bad grades they got, right? Let's be honest, David. They got really, really bad grades from the NFLPA report cards. And for some reason, I can, understand why. I went into the cafeteria where not all players are meant to be in there at the same time. They order ahead, right? And the kitchen has it ready for them. I didn't get to taste any of the food that was created poorly, obviously, but very, very small room. And I think my main takeaway from kind of the whole facility was just like, they were doing the best with the space that was afforded to them, right? Because they're working in an office building. And I truly think they've maximized every inch of the place that they can. But by NFL standards, that's not going to cut it, just space-wise. I think if their space was better, I think you would see a lot more. I also got to go in the weight room. And I wonder if Jim Harbaugh did some renovating in there because the equipment and things like that all look top-notch. I also got to see Ben Herbert's, be their everyday board where it's just like their everyday THE or whatever it is. But it was cool seeing that in the baselines and kind of everyone stacked up next to each other, and that starting to begin right now. That was in there. Also saw the closet where the infamous shop vac was, so that was really nice. And there was other things like, hey, the equipment room, the locker room was really interesting as well. I'll talk about that a little bit. But it was cool getting to see the inside of it, but I understand why they got the grades they did and exactly why they should be so much better once they open up the new facilities in El Segundo.
Well, I mean, the first thing that you said is they're working out of an office space. Like, this isn't meant to be a sports performance facility, right? Like, they're not. This is not built to
not an NFL
house
one, no.
and service a NFL franchise full of 60, 70 plus athletes at this moment in time. So they had to do what they could with the space that they had available to them. So. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not the most ideal. I mean, you want to be able to have as much space as humanly possible. Well, guess what? That's on the horizon with the new facility. Like, that's why they invested so much money into that, is they've been able to see what they've experienced in this office space and all of their restrictions and their limitations. And then they've been able to eliminate all of those things and be able to upgrade all of those things so that they can win outside the margins, and they can and really go out there and make the most out of being able to get every little bit of performance out of their players with the introduction of this new facility that they're going to be stepping into very shortly.
Yeah, and at least, the cafeteria from the food perspective, that should be a lot better. Maybe even potentially a famous chef getting in there and doing
Wolfgang
his thing.
Puck, baby.
Wolfgang Puck, obviously. But also a 3-story cafeteria. So you're talking about going into a small room that has a bar and, maybe less than 10 tables in it to a world-class kind of cafeteria that should have world-class food in it. But a couple other things that were cool. Got to go through the locker room and see how the locker room had changed because now it's all numerical. Except for one. There was one player whose locker stayed in the same place and didn't have to move. Derwin James.
Oh, Derwin James.
Yeah, so it was like 3, 1, 2, a little out of order, and we were kind of like, that's a little weird. And he's like, hey, one guy got to keep where his locker was. It was Derwin James, and they're going to be moving to a new
face of the
locker room and
franchise
stuff
type guy. Not that surprised.
It was also cool too, just that, and I think a guy that really kind of embodies what Jim Harbaugh wants this team to be and what his coaching staff wants. But it was also really cool seeing the nameplates on the locker rooms because you'd think you would have their college or something, but it didn't. It actually had where they went to high school and then how many stars they had as a recruit coming out of high school.
That's
Justin Herbert, 3 stars. Obviously they messed that one up. But it was cool too, just seeing, some of these guys just says NR, not ranked coming out of high school, and now they have a locker room in an NFL locker room, right? So that was really cool. And then got to see the solar eclipse. Walked out. We were going through the tour, walking to the press conferences, which they totally caught me off guard because they told me, hey, you can't ask any questions. And then all of a sudden, Jamal LaFrance says, podcasters, you can go. Dan, go ahead. And I'm just like, you told me I wasn't allowed. So, yeah, you can hear me asking a couple questions to Gus Edwards. Got to ask a question to Marcus Brady as well, the passing game coordinator. But we did get to see the eclipse, and they had glasses. These are official Chargers Eclipse glasses I got from the Performance Center. I was looking up at the eclipse, took them off. Who's standing next to me? John Spanos, the president of football operations. Dean Spanos' son. So
crazy.
It's just cool being up there for stuff like that. It's like, hey, everyone's in there working towards that common goal or whatever. And then, if you're up there hanging out, you might just end up next to John Spanos. And it doesn't matter how tough of a guy you are. Everyone wanted to see the solar eclipse. So got to see that. Got to sit in there for the press conference. Got to see, Daniel Popper and the Chris Rims and all those guys do their work and covering this team the best way. And I think better than what most teams get from their B reporters. So super cool. And just the beginning, there will be more opportunities to get more inside access down the road. And that's all I can say about it for now. But we do have much more to get into, including how each of the run game and pass game coordinators talked about building this offense around Justin Herbert and how they're trying to make his life earlier and what this team is looking for in this wide receiver room that is obviously small, according to Marcus Brady, and he's right. All of that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It can be easy to ignore our social battery and spread ourselves thin, especially with social gatherings picking up after the winter. What's the right amount of socializing for you, and how do you recharge? Maybe you thrive around people, or maybe you need some more alone time. And one of the things that BetterHelp and therapy can help provide for you is a way to make it feel like your social battery is full and making sure you're getting the most out of it. So not only are you seeing the people that you need to see, and maybe even cutting out some people and not feeling guilty about it, but feeling like a fully charged version of yourself when you do go out and when you do go socialize with other people. And therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, because the great thing about BetterHelp is it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Save you some gas money from sure, because you can do it right from your house. And you don't have to wait, hey, I can't go in until Friday. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And the great thing about BetterHelp is if you don't like it, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. David, I got to sit in on the press conferences of all the run game coordinator, the pass game coordinator, also Gus Edwards, who was a little short on words for sure, and said all the things we thought he would, right? Loves the scheme. He's the downhill runner, built to be that guy for this team. But I was more interested to hear how each of the run game and pass game coordinator talked about Justin Herbert and how this team is going to try to maximize him, because now going into year 5 with him, we still don't feel like we've ever really seen that, right? And we'll start with Andy Bischoff here, who was asked about Justin Herbert, and basically this is what he had to say about it. He said, not everyone needs to function like Peyton Manning did to win football games. Can he do that? I mean, the guy is brilliant. Intelligence-wise, this is a guy who has rare intelligence. However, in our system of football, do we really need to put him under that much stress on every single down? The answer is no. This goes along, David, with what kind of they've been telling us this whole time, which is like we don't necessarily need Justin Herbert to play hero ball all the time. If this offense is, working at its max capacity, if we're fully getting the most out of this offense, it can't always be on Justin Herbert all the time.
Well, we've seen that movie. We've seen that movie more times than not. That movie's been a horror film because the defense has been able to key in on exactly what the Chargers are wanting to do offensively, which is throw the ball all over the yard, and then they can just sit back in coverage and make it extremely difficult, put a roof on the coverage and not allow anyone to get deep, and then make Justin have to make picture-perfect, very short window throws, which is a recipe for disaster. We've seen it too many different times. And so, this is something that has to change. They have to have more of a running game. They have to be able to take some stuff off of Justin Herbert's plate and find some more balance. And I think that's one of the themes that was prevalent throughout everybody talking about how they're going to improve and make things better for Justin Herbert.
We want to protect him so he can be his best. We want to provide a run game that can give us balance. We want to be an offense that's different and unique for him to be able to function at his best. And he's embraced it all. And I think that is, such a good point as far as just, we know what we have, right? But even if he's Peyton Manning, it doesn't mean Peyton Manning was doing it on his own or has to do it on his own.
Yeah.
And if you're kind of going out there thinking that your offense is just going to be Justin Herbert's going to bail us out, which we've seen way, way too many times, it's probably going to look like it has, right? Justin Herbert putting up gaudy stats and the Chargers not winning football games and not being a complete offense. So it's nice, Andy Bischoff, hearing that from him and just kind of, what he thinks as the run game coordinator that brings to the table for Justin Herbert. It was also interesting hearing from Marcus Brady, who's the new passing game coordinator who's coming in this year in his first year, and just kind of how he feels about having Justin Herbert as quarterback. I think he's pretty excited about it.
He's extremely excited about it. He said, man, when you look at this guy, he's humongous. Like he's massive. He's a lot bigger and he can really do anything on the field. But as far as what he wanted to do to make things better for him, he said, you have to be able to keep defenses off balance. When you're able to run the ball well, then your play action is really huge. It makes it easier for our quarterback, easier for our receivers to get open. and easier and because of the reaction of the defense. So, which is absolutely true. I mean, we've seen it. When you're able to run the ball effectively, then you really can get the defense is, sucked in to try to stop the run. Then you hit them over the top with the play action, and your receivers don't have to worry about, being as fine on the routes. They can get open a lot more effectively, and the quarterback can make better throws to more wide open receivers. So the running game and the establishment of the running game is going to make the passing game and the play action game a lot more effective. And we've seen it when Justin Herbert has a good running game, his play action game is deadly.
Yeah, and I mean, we really haven't seen it, right? But as far as, how they're actually building this passing game itself, though, it's easy because there's nothing that's out of the question for them. There's nothing that they can install because he said this. He does really well at all three levels. He's sharp. You can tell how quickly he's moving through his progressions. He's athletic. He has all the tools to be successful in all areas. We just have to be able to maximize that and complement it with the good run game. He said, hey, when you can take all of that off his plate, it just slows down the mind, right? It's just less thinking for him. Now he can just go out there and play and let his ability shine where he's just not thinking too much. And I would also add to that, not feeling too much like he has to go win the game. I mean, he's Justin Herbert. It's the NFL. Games are close. They're going to have to rely on him to go win them games at times and put the team on his back. And one of the things I heard kind of reading in between the lines from Marcus Brady is just like, hey, we know who we have. So as much as, the run game's getting all the shine right now and all those things, we still have Justin Herbert, and we're going to let him sling it all around. And people and Chargers fans specifically shouldn't be worried about that because we know what we have. But getting him into manageable situations, having the ability to run the ball on first and second down, being able to give yourself options on third down, all of those things are kind of where he's at right now, where it's like, hey, we're going to have a passing game because we have Justin Herbert, and there's nothing off the table as far as that goes. But we also want to put him in this best position where he's going to get better looks and more favorable downs and distances for when we do ask him to throw the ball. And I thought it was interesting, too, what he had to say about the wide receiver room because he was asked, what do you need? What are you looking for in this wide receiver room? And I thought it was interesting what his answers were to that.
Yeah, it was very interesting. He said, we want guys that can make plays in all aspects. To be able to get on the field, you have to be able to block. So you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, when
you're talking about offense, I always think about basketball, right? You're going to have different roles. You want guys that can stretch the field. You want guys that are going to be quick at the possession of the catch. You want to be able to win quickly. You got to have guys that can win at the catch point. So, it's just we've heard this before. We've heard this analogy a couple of different times.
Brandon Staley is the one I heard it from last before that, right? So I was trying to block that part out. But
I know.
You get what he's saying, though.
But yeah. You want receivers that can do different things, but most importantly, we want guys that can separate. We want guys that can win off the line of scrimmage and catch the football and make plays. Like those are the type of receivers that we're looking for.
When he said the number one thing is just being able to get open, create space, and give a throw for the quarterback. Guys that are great off the line of scrimmage on the releases, if they're getting pressed, guys that are great at the top of their route, and then guys that can make those tough catches. It's a combination of all three of those things, and it's hard to kind of find where they're getting each of those aspects right now from this receiving room, but I did appreciate the fact that he said, hey, there's work to do, there's time, we're going to be adding bodies to this room, but we do have some guys here that we're excited about, and the guy he mentioned was Quentin Johnson, his development going into year 2. Some guys don't always just start fast in their rookie season, but they can make that jump in the second year. Interesting that you brought him up specifically. I mean, I'd say I'm more bullish on Josh Palmer just because we've seen him play at a pretty high level, but he is bullish on Quentin Johnson. I like how many kind of coaches have brought him up. I mean, it does seem like one of the big kind of emphases for this team and for this coaching staff is, hey, we got a guy here that has obvious talent. How do we realize that? Because obviously, if you can get a year 2 leap from Quentin Johnson, it doesn't make your receiver room great, but it makes it a lot better than we're kind of looking at it right now. Do I think that's going to happen? I need to see it to an extent. Like, I mean, I know he's an athlete. Seeing him on the field when I got credentialed last year for training camp, you could tell once he had the ball in his hands, he's a different kind of athlete for the size that he is, right? At the same time, though, we have to see it fully realized. We don't see the work he's putting in right now. We don't see how much better and how much improved he could be. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about his hands and the drops and things like that. But it's so much more than that. Remember, we have Daniel Popper on the show, and just like, hey, it's not just the hands, right? It's the fine nuances of the game. It's being able to get off press. It's to be able to actually have the subtlety in your routes to be able to get open. And those were all things he didn't have in year 1. So there's a lot of work
I want to see the development, Daniel. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see what these coaches can do with him.
And he did say that, Marcus Brady, that he likes Sanjay Law, and Sanjay Law's worked with a lot of great receivers, and he feels like these receivers are in good hands. But at the end of the day, you need to add a lot of juice to that room in general because there's just not enough guys right there. Even if you think that Quentin Johnston is a bona fide wide receiver one, which I don't think anyone's expecting him to be at this point, you would still need more. And that's saying a lot because he is far from that as far as what we've actually seen him do on the field. Could he make a leap in year 2? Absolutely. I need to see it, right? At least at training camp, I need to see some things. Even at training camp, he was making a bunch of big plays, wasn't dropping a lot of balls, and then one day he dropped like 4 passes in a row, right? So you just never know until you see it in action. But I like the fact that they're going to do whatever they can to get the most out of him and get the most out of the guys they have in that room, while also realizing, hey, we just playing out, need more in that room. So I do want to talk about the tight ends, though, because I think that Andy Bischoff gave a very, very in-depth look at how he feels about this tight end room and exactly why they brought in the guys they did and exactly what they're expecting from those guys, including some incredibly high praise for not only Will Dissly, but also Hayden Hurst, too, who he said could basically be up there with some of the best receiving tight ends in the league. So we're going to talk about that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about Game Time because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have. And it's always great. If you're not doing anything, check your Game Time app. I was just getting a little bit of FOMO. I was sitting in my house, and I realized there were $7 tickets to the Padre game, right? And I know not all Padre fans out there, $7 tickets. And you see all the prices up front. That's a great thing about Game Time. You know when you see it that you're getting the Game Time guarantee and nobody's going to be able to beat that price. But you're also getting all the full price up front. $7 could have saw the Padres come back from 8-0. Missed out on that, but I have done things like the Blink-182 concert. Did not think I was going to be able to go. Thought it was going to be too expensive a couple months ago. Then went on there, found tickets for literally $18. Went, and it was awesome. An experience I'll never forget as a San Diego guy. So if you guys want something to do, make sure you check out your Game Time app because there's going to be tickets on there that are cheaper than you expected and some fun things that you'll be able to do. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, let's talk about what else Andy Bischoff had to say because it was interesting getting his insight onto what this tight end room is because unlike the receiving room, I do think this tight end room is built with a lot more depth and I think has a lot more to be excited about, especially if you're listening to what Andy Bischoff has to say about it, their new tight end coach and run game coordinator. So before we get into that, make sure you guys are checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel, giving you coverage of every sport the way that only the Locked On local insiders who cover their team every day can give you. But this was the interesting thing to me about Will Dissly, a signing that we really loved, right? The longest deal they gave out, 3 years in this free agency period. And it's like, okay, they must really want Will Dissly, a guy who, from a production standpoint, hasn't done enough or done a lot as far as a receiver. But there's one thing he does really well, David. And if you ask Andy Bischoff, he's going to tell you he's one of 3 guys in the NFL at his position that can own the C gap. And if you want to be a good running game, you want to own the C gap.
Yeah, he said when you start with Will Dissly, you're talking about one of the 3 guys in the league that can own the C gap, period. There's not many of them. This is a different kind of football league that we live in now. To have a tight end that can own the C gap is rare. He is one of those guys. So just for people who don't know what that is, the C gap is outside of the tackles, the left tackle and the right tackle. It's that, guy that's going to be on the outside of those 2 tackle players. So, and he's right.
Where a tight end lines up, right?
Right. Where the tight end lines up. Absolutely. But the Chargers have not had a, adequate blocking tight end in a very, very long time. Virgil Green, I think was a pretty decent one. Brandon Malimaniuna, and I know I messed it up. I apologize, but he was a phenomenal blocking tight end for the Chargers. They have not had one in a very, very long time. So to have one that's, literally legitimately being ranked as like the 3rd best blocking tight end in the league now in the fold is really special. It's great to have. I know it seems like a very small detail, but it's very important. There's so many different moving parts in the blocking scheme. It's not just the offensive linemen. The tight ends are a big part of it, and I think Will Dissly is a huge upgrade in that department.
Yeah, and Andy Bischoff was also saying, like, hey, don't sleep on him as a receiver, too. He's a guy who's highly efficient in the receiving game, doesn't drop passes, doesn't fumble the football, and catches the ball at a really high percentage when he's targeted. So I think he is kind of an underrated receiver that's gotten covered up by guys like Noah Fant and Gerald Everett. And that's not exactly what they're going to ask him to do. The main thing is, hey, he's basically an extra offensive lineman at the end of the line of scrimmage that's really going to help you in the running game. And I think that is where you're going to see outside of the offensive line, where this run game improves the most because of the guys they brought in for this. Even a guy like Ben Mason, right? Half fullback, half tight end is going to be a bit good in that regard as well, I think. But not nearly kind of as high of a praise as he had for Hayden Hurst. I mean, if you're looking at why they brought in Hayden Hurst and you hear what Andy Bischoff has to say about him, I mean, they truly feel like he could be, in the right situation, one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. And I just didn't necessarily expect to hear him get that kind of praise.
I did not. Maybe his coach is gassing him up. Maybe he's hyping him up, but this is really high praise here. He said, Hayden, to me, you have 6 guys in the league who everybody wants. You can name the 6. You can go with George Kittle. You can say Darren Waller. Name whoever you want. Everybody wants those 6 guys. There's no reason that Hayden can't be that next guy. There's no reason. He has all the speed, all the hands, all the ability. Hayden just needs to find the right situation. And they're hoping that this is the right situation for him. I mean, yeah, obviously he's had some injury concerns and issues, in the last season. And, he's been on a couple of different teams. Maybe this is the right situation for him. Being back in a system with, front office people that drafted him, then brought him into the league, like the Chargers general manager, Joe Ortiz.
Or his old tight end coach, Andy Bischoff.
Exactly, yeah. Or Andy Bischoff. So back in that same situation, under that same tutelage, and obviously he feels like Hayden Hurst can be somebody that is one of the better tight ends in the league. Obviously, we haven't really seen that up to this point. But, hey, we see it all the time. Sometimes players just need that change of scenery, need to get in front of new coaches, and then they take off. Hopefully that's the case for Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, and he said this. He will provide the athletic element to this offense that gives us an opportunity, and that's why they brought him in, to be the guy who can kind of stretch things a little bit, to be an athletic kind of tight end that you can, put out and split out there and be able to kind of win those one-on-one matchups. And he is a good athlete, right? I mean, ran a 4.67 40, 86 percentile of all the tight ends that have come out in recent memory. So he is a good enough athlete to kind of be that guy. And I don't see him being, in the top 6 tight ends as far as receiving categories. But hey, if he's a top 15 receiving tight end this year, that's a huge gigantic bargain. So
yeah,
he feels like it's the right situation. I'm hoping that it is for his sake. But it was also kind of what you would think if he wasn't there, Donald Parham would be, right? And this is what he had to say about Donald Parham. And he said, the message has been clearly sent in our room that whether you're here last year or not here, everybody has a clean slate. Everybody has the refresh button. We're not worried about what it looked like a year ago or 2 years ago. And to me, David, this isn't just a Donald Parham message. This is a message for the whole team and something we're really hoping for, right? Where there's no biases. I don't care how bad you were potentially in the past or how good you were. Once you step out on that field, the best man wins, and that's who's going to play.
That's all we want. Just have the best players on the field playing for you on game days. No more first round pick this, favorite that. No, it's if you're a 6th, 7th round pick, but you're outplaying the person in front of you, then you deserve to be on the football field. Point blank, period. That's what I want to see, and it seems like that's the mentality not only of Andy Bischoff, but of this entire coaching staff.
That's what you're hoping for, right? Yeah. And I think he also said, hey, this is a guy that we feel like in our scheme could fully maximize him, and I wouldn't think that necessarily just because of kind of the tight end and the physical profile that Donald Parham has. And his blocking ability obviously has been pretty poor in the past as someone, 6'8", 6'9", that's kind of a tough responsibility for him. Yeah. And he's one of those guys that has the widest kind of variety of outcomes. I think he truly could be on the roster bubble this year fighting for a roster spot. And to me, this is probably his last best chance to make an impact with this team, right? I mean,
I agree.
Certain point, taking signed by other teams, right, or other regimes, things like that. I don't know what it's going to look like for Donald Parham. I'd like to think he's going to get a fair shot, but they went out and got 2 guys specifically to kind of fill in the offense that he wants. So he can say that to me, but at the same time, right, they got it guys that they feel like can bring what they want from that tight end room. And Andy Bischoff, feels like he's like an offensive lineman at heart, how much he loves the offensive line, saying, hey, everything's centered around the offensive line. People are going to want to play here on the offensive line. But that also means you have to block and be a well-rounded tight end as well. So that's a big part of it. Can Donald Parham do that? I know they're going to try to get him there, and that's going to be interesting to see kind of how much improvement he can make in a short amount of time to try to make an impact on this team where they win out and got to guys with you already in the room, right? So he's saying that. Will Donald Parham be that guy with his fresh slate? Hard to say right now based on what we've seen from him in his first few seasons. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We missed our buy or sell this week because we had an interview, and then obviously I got to go up to Chargers voluntary workouts today. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. Get into some buy or sells. We have some from the fans. We'll probably put another post out. If you want to get your buy or sell in, you can hit us up at Locked On LAC. And to make sure you guys don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Do want to thank everyone again and thank David for holding things down while I was gone. Never missed this amount of shows in the 6 years of doing this, right? 8 years total, honestly. But things happen, scary situation, scary family situation. I know it was nice getting the baby on here. Didn't think she would be, after making her first appearance on the Locked On Chargers podcast, having to go back to the hospital and ending up in the NICU. Super scary, super thankful to have her home and, to get a crash course in parenting I wasn't expecting. Glad that she's home now. And thank you to everyone for the well wishes and everything like that, and just mostly for your understanding. So if you guys want to hit us up tomorrow, you can do that at Locked On LAC and find the show there every day, as well as on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We also post the show every day to each of our own individual Twitter accounts. You can find me at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at Dro Talk SD. But excited for more opportunities like today to get some more inside information for you guys and get on the other side of the fence, and hope you guys are around to listen to it. So we'll be back to you guys tomorrow with some buy or sell. If you guys want to get them in, get them in. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bulls.